I'd like to call this special meeting to order to review restoration concepts of the Second County General Store and Post Office. I believe we have to start with the pledge. But I think it's like a normal meeting.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. So, now that we've settled on the chocolates. Basically today we are just considering the concepts that are proposed before us. Those being a consideration for the moving the building back. We are not going to discuss specific distances. There might be some adjustment to that setback being shorter than the 16-foot, but it's the concept of moving it back some. We are also considering the discussion of the second-story roof to the back and also the front appearance. And so those are the things that we are being asked to consider. And then at the next point, we would be discussing and negotiating through particulars on it. So, is there any comments about the concepts from the board?
I think as an overall thing, I could say they've done a fabulous job overall.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I would continue. Peter, I agree with you. This is a presentation that is very well done. We appreciate the concern of the developers in coming to us initially, and we look forward to their positions today, and so we can discuss it.
I don't have a problem with the concept.
Okay. You're sitting in today.
Yeah.
For us. Thank you.
I don't have a problem with the concept. I think if it implies sort of a tacit approval on so much, I mean, I think the setback, I mean, I guess in the concepts are okay. I do worry about this very big point of congregation to the point where someone's coming in and out of packages.
Right. Well, I say it's concept is what we're
Yes.
discussing today, not specific.
There's a manner where all three things can be done.
Right. So, did you? I'm not sure that you have much more to present to us besides this. Is that correct?
Should I approach that?
Sure, that's fine.
I'm David Curry. Thank you
Yes.
all for considering this, and we very much appreciate how important this building is and how critical it is to the village of it, like you said. I can run through some of the goals that we're trying to achieve with this, if that would be helpful, or how can
I think today we were just trying to establish whether we wanted to continue in this concept or not. Tony Tohill, can you verify the precise purpose of this?
I have heard all of the comments so far, and in my opinion, your comments would suggest that your perception of what's taking place today is more narrow than it should be. There's no reason to limit the conversation to 3 items, albeit everybody would be especially interested in each of those items, the moving of the building, the change of the roof line, the extension in the back. Those are important, but that should not limit the dialogue today. And instead, you should allow Mr. Curry to make a presentation consistent with the village code guidelines and consistent with the guidelines of the Secretary of Interior, as any of these guidelines may apply to the proposal here today. I think I heard one person on the board say that they were not supportive of the concepts, but I wasn't sure that I was hearing that correctly. Other than that, I haven't heard anybody on the board say that they have a black and white objection to any of what is being proposed by the applicant.
I would like to say, with Tony's background, much of what you said here is very clear. But in terms of us looking at the exterior, et cetera, as we're going to go forward, which is what you need us to be able to do. So you have some, not surety, but some concepts of what we will be examining so you can proceed carefully. I'd love to understand the intentions of the parties. I think we do. But if we have the intention of why are you moving it back? What do you intend to do in the front? When I look at the front of the building, you have a large covered porch with steps going up rather than a short porch and flat area. Why that intention? What is the intention in the back? What is the intention and structurally, though we don't look at interiors, it's going to affect our view of the space itself. As to combining I did listen for the full meeting that you had at a previous presentation, doing it in a car on the phone is not easy. To go over the integration of the post office, which you tried to make quite clear. I understood some of the boxes and the open space and closing things.
Right.
But I think if we have, just as an initial presentation, intention as to the various elements that you're aware are going to require movement by the boards, et cetera, I think it may help us in terms of responding to those.
Great. So the new owner is very much, it's not really something, let's just kind of come up with this great sort of concept that we want to do that doesn't really have to do with the village. It's mostly about preserving this and saving it and getting it back to sort of a village use. The most important thing is to make sure that the post office stays and the post office is not challenged and the post office feels comfortable remaining. So anything that the post office needs right now, however we can accommodate that, and anything the post office is going to need going forward. For example, the taco truck that was there, obviously it needs more room, so we don't have a truck stuck out in front. There's another pandemic where we feel like we're not getting sold tacos. So having enough space that can sort of accommodate what we saw, that it's kind of an artificial surge, but making sure that there is enough room for things like that. I spent a lot of time with the folks down there, sort of looking at flow, how things came in, how things were brought in, the storage and sorting areas that they have, and we went over a lot of the needs that they have and how much we can actually add and increase the space that they have for proper sorting and proper storage. Trying to come up with additional space for as many more boxes as can be accommodated. I'm not sure how many more, but I know they've got a waiting list. Quite a few of those folks on the waiting list are folks in the village. So trying to accommodate their interests and their needs as much as possible. That's really probably one of the highest priorities, and making sure that all the sort of federal rules that are here now and are coming up, as many of those things can be accommodated as possible. And we really don't want to give the post office any excuse to leave. We want to make sure that all the ADA things and the ramp, which is probably wants to be fully compliant instead of partially compliant. These are things that we want to make sure you don't come back to fight anybody at some point.
Is the ADA a requirement of the store as well?
Yes.
Okay, so the ramp takes care of both with the integration.
Yeah, and the idea is, just to kind of do this once instead of coming back in a couple of years and going, oh, there's another, there's some other requirement coming along. So really, while we wanted to kind of rush and get this thing open for this summer, really the bigger intention is to make this thing good for the next 50 years. So we took a little bit more time to be as thoughtful as we could to really observe how people move and flow inside out, the traffic flow in front of the store, where people walk, where people sit, the kinds of interaction between the front of the store and folks coming and going out of the post office, down the store, and things like that. and try and come up with enough room and meet all the requirements so that we can kind of do this once. So both in terms of safety, in terms of any government standards or requirements, in terms of health and environment. So really, it's sort of a big study to try and figure out how many of these things sort of want to be solved to make this thing as good as it can be, given all the constraints of such a tight site that really is, including some very generous consideration by some of the neighbors to try and help make this possible. So the ADA, the ramp, the circulation and the bathroom areas in the back. So that federal entity sort of gets the kinds of things that they're needing. So they don't just exclusively. So they really feel like they've got all the requirements met. And then safety and health. A big part of it is actually getting all this. And Tony, I don't know if we want to get into health at all or septic or anything like that.
I don't think you need to do septic.
Okay. Safety. I'll let you guide me. I'm not. You've got the guidelines.
I have the guidelines in my hand.
Okay. So safety is a big one. Part of getting the building up to current, construction standards and things like that. There's a lot of renovations that happen in the store, so for a bit of structural work on the inside, but keep the outside pretty much exactly the way it is. So really, it's about preserving the look of the village and the integrity of that. So really, sort of rebuilding from the inside out, kind of, so to speak. But getting some proper size roof rafters and things like that up there, because there are some sagging things. There's some legacy fire damage in some of the corners up there that we want to repair. I think that was from 1948.
When I look at the images that you've given us, when I look at the images you've given us, which are of the building, and that is our true responsibility. But as we're looking at this as a whole, the purposes of long term, et cetera, and you're talking about safety, I don't see any conceptual elements other than a statement in your presentation that said, I'm sorry, I don't remember what page it's on. It says something about seating in the back.
That's one of my questions.
Okay, in other words, it says, I'm so sorry, I do apologize. Refrigerated areas, I remember something about mixed looking,
It's
mismatched tables and chairs surrounded by an urban flower garden that reveal the farm fields to the south and mismatched. Large windows to reveal to the south and mismatched. I don't see it structurally as that, how it looks to the south. In terms of the front, I would love to understand how you look at traffic. Are there going to be, right now are numbers of chairs outside of the building? Okay, this is going to be moved back. You have given us a number. I don't know if that's going to stay, but is there going to be seating outside? What is, we hope this would bring this a center of our village.
Yeah.
Okay, how will bicycles be handled? Okay, Emily says I don't have to worry about horses. I really want a horse post outside, but she says we don't have that very much. If there's seating in the back and there's seating in the front, I'd like to see what it looked like, or having a concept just even verbally as to what that's going to be, rather than just this blank that we have
here. Yeah, we can certainly develop that. So the idea is that with that porch area, that creates a bit of a buffer between the street and the cars and the store itself. So as you come in and out, you're not stepping straight down into what's pretty close to a fairly busier than I like street there. So to create that buffer, that's a bit more of a space where if you are bumping into somebody, you want to chat or something like that, that creates an opportunity. There's an old sort of urban planning, move to use that space.
Is this,
That's the back.
no, I understand
Okay.
it's the back. Is this planned to be a seating area?
If the village is interested in something like that, that's something we're interested
What
in.
is the purpose of this large glass door?
So
Yes, that's my
conceptually,
question.
so conceptually, that door, a big part of restoring this is trying to get the building and everything to be a part of the community and keep it a part of the community and have a relationship to the community, what the community, what this village was. So open farm fields, and what we use. So the idea is that is more of an agricultural piece on the back. So a lot of the different additions and things we replace with one cleaner structure that feels a little, I think, in the historical sense that having that second structure being sort of subservient to the primary structure. In other words, there's this primary store in front, and there's more of a sort of a service, a smaller subservient structure in the back, but that structure being open, so it has a relationship to the fields and the planting and the growing. That's the history of that.
So there's no seating plan for back here with these doors?
We'd be interested in having seating back there if possible, if the village is interested. Probably be a nice place to sit, but obviously we got to work through parking and things like that. There's a number of other things that we all sort of have to figure out.
It's a big deal.
It's not just in the village. I mean, you have to tell us what you want, and then I
Yeah.
can give you some ideas. So we can't dictate, we don't intend to, but we would like to know what the full plans are for operationally.
Mhm.
When we look at this, it's not a residence, it is a place of business.
Yeah.
And so we'd like to know what that business is gonna, how it impacts our community. So I think we
Yeah.
need some of that information to effectively advise.
Mhm. So, I mean, I don't know if you wanna speak about any of these. Okay, Pastor.
Yeah, I guess that, I mean, one question we might have is, that there's gonna be an overlap here between what planning, site planning does, what the zoning board does. So in terms of getting too deep into the weeds of the operation. This is a work in progress too, and we're trying to set this up for the next 150 years. If tables work, they work. If they don't work, they're not gonna work. And that's not, we don't want that to be driving the bus on this project, but right now it's just an idea, but that's if the site plan works out where we can put a couple of seats and tables out there, we will. If we can't, it's not gonna happen.
Does it become an event space or, I mean?
No. No, we don't, the use, we don't want the use to change. That's not what this is about. But, we do want to try to get at least some parameters of feel for the building itself.
So the doors are again, sort of have more of a relationship with what site is, the fields and things like that. That kind of opens, has a bit of a.
The doors imply people going out there.
Yes, yeah,
That's what I'm trying to get at.
yes. So there's that as well. So not just a view, but if that's something that can work out.
Could I discuss the new roof line
Yes,
visible from the north?
yes.
I personally think it's very cumbersome and much too high.
So.
I don't know what you have going on in there. That's not for me to talk about. I can only talk about how it looks from the outside.
Tell us what page
And
you're
it's just too big, too high, too
Mhm.
tall.
on. Can you refer to the page that you're on?
Oh, I'm on page A 2.0, page 24.
Mhm. So they're early in the research of the history of the building, the history of the village and things like that. We became aware of a number of different collections of things that were historical in nature that seemed to be of interest to try and provide a place for that. And so part of this design was to try and accommodate some of that. If that's something, again, if that's something that's of interest to the village or not, that was driving that second story space. So to try and accommodate that.
Do you need such a high roof for Merrill's collection, for the antique collection?
That's pretty minimal in order to have standing headroom through the bulk. Those dormers on the side provide the sort of the walking area there. If that, if those kinds of antiques end up being part of this, that seemed to be the kind of space to be able to actually view them. But if they end up going somewhere else, then that's something that ends up being.
So if it ends up going somewhere else, then you could just lower the roof and have it storage up there.
If that's something you would like to.
And I have a question that has nothing to do with anything, but there's a chimney here. What happened to there's a chimney here, is there not? And the existing
There is, yeah, there's an old brick chimney piece on the side
What was
there.
that attached to?
That at one point apparently was a wood stove that was on the side, and that wood stove, so very interesting history. We haven't really even, we're probably, I don't know, halfway through sort of figuring out what the history of this is. A lot of folks here have been very helpful in shining a light on different events and things like that throughout. But post office on one side, post office on the other, post office in the middle being served by both sides, wood stove on one side, wood stove on the other. So it's kind of been a very interesting
So that was,
progression.
that's
That's-
how they warmed this post office in with that one chimney.
Yeah, or the store when the store was there.
Okay,
Yeah,
Huh.
kind of fun.
so it's useless now,
Yeah, not, I
just a
think,
pretty thing.
yeah, so right now it's
I
all
don't
back.
like it.
I kind of like it. Maybe that's something
Can
that
that
should
move when
stay.
you move it back, move the building back, or is
Sure.
that just crumbling?
We could probably, we might have to reconstruct it. It hasn't been
No.
pointed in a long time.
Yeah, you don't have to, I'm just curious about
It is kind of a fun historic
it. It
feature.
is, it
The
is.
heating is now gas, is that correct?
Yes, propane. And so that's all direct vent that runs out through the side of the building right now. And obviously part of the, upgrading all this is to get all the systems served at current standards and everything that really supports the whole building. Already brought in, the mayor was very helpful in letting us know that the Suffolk County Water Authority was running pipes, so we paid to have those extended to the area for both the water, because right now the sewer is actually still in a well. Crazy enough. So now we've got water, we're just running in the building, but that also gives us the opportunity to actually sprinkle the building properly, which I think would be nice, try a chance to save everything.
Okay, my other concern would be, which I see you addressed here, is the exterior door to the post office. I do not think the post office should be linked in any way with the general store. No door from the store into the PO. It's just asking for trouble. It's asking for old paper cups and garbage pail full of hamburgers. Anyway, they should be totally, utterly separate. In case the store again gets another owner and it's abandoned, and the only way to get to it is through the store, or that's the way. So that I would just pound on the table and say, no joining it from the store.
Could it be just separate, not fully attached, but still allow the 188 compliant ramp to serve those spaces? Or you have to like flank?
That's kind of one of the tough things that we because of the size of the site, and to be as respectful as we can to all the neighbors, and they've been very gracious in giving us a little bit of breathing room to try and get as far as we have. That's one of the tough things architecturally to try and figure out how to solve. And it's a bit of a puzzle how to thread this thing in and get it in to serve that whole space. Right now, it's just the front steps that serves the store. So yeah, that's a tough one.
And I mean, one of the driving ADA features.
But I hear what you're saying in terms of store owners and things like that.
Very different clients between the post office and Pierre's too.
I mean, technically, that ramp with the access is the only ADA access for the store under this design. That's what we've been trying to figure out. Is would we have to create a second ramp somewhere to get to the store if there wasn't this access inside? So that creates a pretty big challenge for us.
And one of the ways we try to configure this, or we have configured this and try to address this, is that ramp feeds what's basically, if you look at the floor plan, feeds what's a common area in the back, but that's sort of a service. So that, so talking about the post office delivery guys, getting a ramp that actually goes straight into a common area that allows them to get in after hours, but also is a bit of an airlock that gets after our deliveries for a store of any kind to sort of come in.
Right.
And to keep it as sort of quiet as possible, that's have one smooth shot where they're not sort of banging upstairs, things like this. So it serves a lot of different purposes in sort of one small space.
I believe at the time that the post office occupied the southern half of the store, there was a separate door between the store, retail store and the post office.
Yeah, opening up the inside of the store was really revealing and walking through with a bunch of folks. You can see that sort of entryway where the main door is right now. There's still a framing of a door on both sides. And you can see in the middle how the middle was actually a double door at one point. It's kind of, all that framing, the history of the whole thing, and a couple of signatures and dates, kind of fun in there. But yeah, you can kind of see how it's kind of evolved through the years. Yeah, even starting from the 1870s, and then at some point it got rotated around, and we building
Done
buildings.
Mary,
It's
Done
got
Mary,
feels like every 25 years something happens to this thing, and
That's,
a lot of it
that's
not
not so
insignificant.
late.
yeah, that's my first report.
Oh,
Yeah, again, the idea is that work with you guys as closely as we can to come up with something that really is gonna get this thing right for the next 150 years. Gonna really be legacy for all.
My recollection of the previous presentation is the entrance that you're talking about, Pingree, to the post office right now is really to an open hall that the operating areas of the post office can be locked up after hours. And all you're doing is walking through an open area with mailboxes facing you. They are all serviced by the mail personnel from the front and from the back, which means that you can get to your post office box as long as the store is open, but it still doesn't affect their operations. I don't know if I didn't think that wasn't a fairly good solution space-wise. In other words, your anxiety about people coming directly from the store. We had that when I first came here within the last 20 years, that the door was inside the store.
and before that, it was all one building. But this is how I feel. I think the post office should be the post office, period. And that's the only door for it. That's it, a separate thing. The store, I'm sorry to say, comes and goes, mostly goes. And the post office is there. So let's just keep it separate.
And is it the oldest continuous operating post office?
It
At
looks
least in
like
Long
it.
Island or
It
something like
sure
that?
looks
I mean,
like it.
It's amazing. You look at the original historical image of Chamberlain Brothers, and there's a post office right there. The other idea was that, really a lot of effort went into the floor plan to also be able to allow what's effectively the lobby to be separated from the counters. So we visited a lot of post offices, sort of talking to the postal service about the kinds of things that they felt that they would allow, so that the lobby could actually have extended, if not full time access, so that, Saturday afternoons and Sundays and whatever, things like that. Once the lobby is accessible 24 hours, if that's something people are interested in, then that can be accessed, and that counter can be just closed during off hours, off business hours.
I can assure you that nothing in Sagaponic should be open 24 hours. I can assure you that.
Living on an island where things kind of shut down at 11:30 and the ferries don't run, it's kind of nice. It's just everybody takes a little breather.
Should we just make a list for this gentleman of what everyone's saying?
It'll be on the minutes.
Well,
Pingree, I'm making that list right now. If you want, let me just review what I have so far. I had intended to wait until the end of all discussion, and we can still do that, but the first item on my list would be moving the building back. And so far in the dialogue, there has not been any objection to moving the building back. There has been a reluctance expressed by Tom to acknowledge any specific dimension, 16 feet or otherwise. But so far, as to the concept, there is no objection. The second item on my list is the height of the new roof line, where there has been an objection expressed. The third item on my list is the entrance to the post office, which broke down into different issues. One is the ADA compliance. The second is the separation from the store. And so I list that as an item on which there's an expression by the board or members of the board in the nature of an objection to the present design. And the fourth and last item on my list so far is the tables and chairs, where, as Tony Pasca correctly pointed out, that's actually a site plan issue. It has been the subject of extensive dialogue between Richard Warren and me on the one hand, and Tony Pasca and other representatives of the property owner on the other hand. So as to that, the board has expressed, or at least I'm hearing, concerns about any proposal for tables and chairs, and the applicant's representatives, to my knowledge, from prior dialogue, is keenly aware of those concerns. That's the list that I have so far.
Good, thank you. Thank you.
I don't know to what extent it's in our purview to look at the interior, but sort of as you enter the space, how that area works really informs the access to the post office.
As a general matter, an AHRB does not look at the interior of the building. At the same time, if the interior of the building has a significant and important relationship to the building's historic character or historic significance, then under the building interior portion of the guidelines, which would be at page 34 of the guidelines, if you have the green book issued by the Department of the Interior, you will find exactly what is recommended and not recommended. But you would first have to establish that the interior has an important and significant relationship to the historic character and historic significance.
It's really good reading at night if you're if you want to go to the
Your mind's on.
So this plan, and page 21 of 29, that's the one that concerns me. I'm not too good at reading plans, but I do not see an exterior door to get into the PO from the outside, that's all. You could get in where you've got this counter, you could put the door there, that would make me happy. I mean, I know there's this one, the handicapped.
Yeah, so we,
I like a door to the PO, period. You
Yeah,
never
we,
know what's gonna go on in there.
what we ended up here, given the site constraints and trying to keep the facade as sort of historically.
Well, there's history and there's history.
Yeah, it's the old saying,
Some
is
of
which
it's
year do you
good.
want to pick?
Some of it's bad.
If both of you can speak a little louder,
I got me.
yes. Thank you. That would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Want me to go through the whole thing again?
Wouldn't hurt.
Never.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll be in the minutes.
That's fine. All right.
Can you hear me?
Okay, well, Pingree, if we were to look at EX 1.1,
1 point, oh. I
What's the
have
page
eight.
page
number?
13, page 13.
Thank you.
13,
Existing.
right?
No.
13 it is.
Just as a quick look at this, other than the window, there is an entrance through the post office, through the square area, and an entrance to through the store.
Mhm.
There's a window on the, I guess it's the north edge of the front part of the building. Is that correct, when I look at it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's covered over by the temporary mailboxes.
Pardon me.
There's a window
Yeah,
behind those temporary
That's right.
mailboxes.
However,
on the wall.
If that was an entrance of some sort, from Pingree's perspective, in other words, you'd have a second entrance into the post office off of the deck, would that resolve your questions, Pingree?
That's
That you
fine.
could lock up the other entrance?
Sure,
Okay,
absolutely.
now understand that I think that what our applicant is looking at, though, is maintaining the flow through from the ADA compliant ramp through the blank area into their store. Could you live with that, with the constraints that they have described, if this entrance was available from day one to the post office? I'm just curious, is that solve one of your concerns?
You mean
Which
if-
means they can close up the other piece. Another owner could say, I'll put in an ADA compliant access, and I don't want the door, and you have solved your problem.
So in the cover photo, it would be this window
That
that
is
would be
correct.
removed, to have a second entrance.
Yes.
From the aesthetic standpoint of it.
Okay, may I ask why?
Well, because the symmetry of the building is destroyed.
You know, it's interesting because when I look at the symmetry of the building, is it?
Yes, in my view it is.
Because there's no similar window on the front of the building. That's the only reason is, no, but this window and this window stay. It's this window.
Oh, that window. I thought you were talking about the big window.
No. The small
window
one.
is the
right?
one with the name of the post office on the back.
That's correct. And that would still maintain the name of the post office and just be a door. I don't know if that's a consideration. I was not speaking of this at all.
Okay,
Okay, but it then delineates the post office as an element of the building, which is something that is clearly something they're willing to preserve as we are. I don't know what it does for flow. It's a quick observation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you get to there, 15 feet gets you up a ramp in there anyways.
Right.
Because that's how we actually get in now. We go up the front steps and there's a door on that side.
Yeah,
And
or
there's,
you go up the ramp.
that's, the ramp is on the side. of the building, yes.
It's an idea. All right,
well, then the porch would have to be changed.
right.
Yes, I know that there's no accident. I do understand. But that seems to routinely raise a situation that they have to consider, just to try to find a way for them to consider it.
That's it for me. The PO and the roof is too tall. And I don't mind pulling it back 16 inches, 16 feet. It's not all that much. I
It's,
will miss the chimney.
Well, I think we could, I like the chimney.
We'll miss the chimney. It's sort of sweet.
A Billy stove at the bottom of it would be perfect.
Yeah. As all the goals and requests that the owner made about restoring it, and doing as much research as we could, and really it's about the building and history and everything else, it's not really about, whatever she is, just tell me where this thing lands. Just make the thing right, and that's what I want. And, it wasn't, she didn't have some, other vision than, they would just, I want your team to just go make this thing right.
That's fabulous.
And even down to the potbelly stuff. She loves the potbelly stuff. We actually looked at potbelly stuff. So I think we may, who knows, we may end up with a chimney.
Well, that would be nice. I would like that. Okay, that's it for me.
Tom, any other comments?
Not for me, no.
Well, I just, as a comment, I think the view from the north with the extended roof that Pingree has an objection to, I am less concerned with it. It's 16 feet back. So it starts at the back of the building going there. And I don't know how obvious it will be as you come down south.
I don't think it is.
Town line, it's not,
From the south or from the north?
no, you're coming from the north, heading south.
Right, it depends on
Pingree-
those short church,
That's right, in other words,
the trees in front of Merrill's, whether you're gonna see anything or
at
not.
all, and so I don't know if I feel the same objection that Pingree has to that extended height on the rear, going to the rear of the building. It's the height of the ceiling going west that you have described as being concerned, is that right?
It's a height, it's this one, A 2.0, page 24. I think it's too high. You'll see it on the level of the, on the top, if you could draw a line on the top of this window. Well, window thing here.
Who does that? It's not really visible from the road when you're driving south.
It will be, yeah,
It is to me,
Well, it is to you.
this is what
it
she's
is to
suggesting.
me, would be to me.
And
It's
the,
just-
the Hildreths, it's store their stuff, so I can't imagine that they'll have an objection.
Well, I just personally think the proportions are wrong. And that is my Poisonal view.
So we try to keep it as small as possible, but it's still, so if you're in the front building and you were to go upstairs, probably about half of the actual width of that building, front to back, is actual full standing height floor space. And so it ends up being the same kind of thing there. So we try to keep it as small as possible, but certainly this is something we should look at and see if there's other ways to do it, because if
Well, if it goes from being a peaked roof to a flat roof at some point, you could lower it and still have the same height without, affecting the design. In other words, no, when you think about it, that's all she's doing. Okay?
No, I
But if you
understand.
make it this way versus making it this way and square, the vision is all you see is the lower roof. You don't ever see, because you can't, the peak. So it doesn't matter. It looks like a peak. It wouldn't be anything else. And satisfies her.
now again, we were trying to take into consideration and account almost every conversation that we've had from neighbors and other folks about trying to make this thing everything that it kind of wanted to be and serve all the different purposes and functions that people were sort of requesting. And some of those functions, like collections and things like that, are something that the village feels there's another way to address
Right.
in some way, then, and that gives us that no longer ends up being, an interest or a request for the building itself, that I can.
Nick, can you comment on Pingree interest?
That's the problem, because we have 6 people on the floor.
Okay, can't do it. Yeah, gotcha.
I think that's.
No, that's not correct. You should encourage everybody who is both a member and an alternate to speak today. Tony Pasca would have no objection to hearing the view of a 6th or 7th person, even though a board of 5 is all that's authorized to act. You're not acting today. You're just trying to express to the applicant's representatives, points that should be considered after today if there is to be a redesign with the proposal. So everybody's view should be solicited today. That's different, but that's the way it should be today.
So Pingree, get
I
ready.
had one question. Looking at page 24, you have a 9-foot height. Is that right on the first floor? Coming out on the proposed extension?
Yep.
Yes.
Is that correct? So what would the height in the 2nd story be? It looks to be maybe 12 or 13 feet.
The actual well, by the time you get to a peak.
Yeah.
The peak actually just comes off the sidewall, so that peak goes up, and it seemed clean to line it up with the roof, but really,
Okay.
it's the actual walking space, especially where those dormers are, is I think maybe 8. They're trying to keep the whole thing
So
as
this
low as
is-
possible.
There's 0 vertical wall on the 2nd floor, starts right at the pitch.
It can either run all the way up. We haven't really sort of figured out how, because it really depends on what ends up going up there. And right now we sort of left the bulk of it open except for where those dormers are. Taking some rough measurements from some of the things that are that wanted to be considered, but I would get if these are things that don't have another home somewhere, I'll be very, straight, then that changes this sort of conversation that I think what Pingree's talking about right now.
But if there was a way to make the sort of extension, we'll call it, even though it's all new, just slightly subordinate, even by 4 inches to the original structure, sort of imply that sort of chronology to the build.
Yes,
I wonder if that wouldn't be, if there's a way where it wouldn't really affect the height in a really sizable way.
that could probably be very accommodating on the inside. So I completely agree. Having a subordinate structure to the primary is really sort of historically what most of these kinds of buildings have evolved into. You've got the primary, the original, and the secondary subordinate, and a lot of the sort of classic New England sort of, friendly
Kind of nesting
forms.
dolls almost.
Yeah.
I'd like to see
So, Nick, could you? Yeah.
The other aspect of that rear structure, and the other sort of subordinate structure kind of scenario is having that primary, and again, going back to sort of classic sort of New England things and things that sort of we found in the neighborhood here was having that primary and the subordinate structure also sort of seeming to have a little different use and a little different sort of treatment. So again, some of the way, for example, the window in the back, a different sort of larger, kind of more agricultural kind of thing in the back that sort of spoke to the environment and the neighborhood and the fields and things like that, as opposed to sort of smaller kind of store residential kinds of things. So trying to sort of differentiate the two parts, it really felt like there is this sort of original structure and then the other is subordinate and has this other kind of purpose.
I think it's really effective in most of the places, not all the places here, even the facade, which is really nice, having the ADA stuff on the side.
It's not easy to get ADA into something like that.
No.
If you're gonna ask me,
Yeah, we need.
but we need to have Tony step down.
No,
No,
Tony
that's
just
not
said
what-
we did not.
That's not what.
No, Pat, all seven should, if everybody's there, by Zoom or otherwise,
Yes.
everybody should speak. The function of this meeting today is to hear members of the board who from time to time likely will serve on panels of 5, albeit changing the identity of individuals, over the course of the ultimate or eventual review of this application. So anybody who has a point of view should be speaking. I have not heard anybody express an objection to moving the building back. I have heard Pingree express an objection to the roof line, the new roof line, but I have not heard anybody else express
Okay.
any point.
I have some comments, if I could.
Next comments, please.
I appreciate, I know this is a difficult application and, I think Frank has done an elegant job of trying to keep the historic nature, but also obviously add quite a bit of square footage and change the manner of the building while trying not to change it. So I appreciate the effort. The two things I'm concerned with, for me, upon the first time I picked up my mail, that experience was really important to me as a sense of history, and also in the community. When you go and pick up your mail, that is sometimes the only time you see and experience time with people in the community and that space outside. And I believe moving it back actually helps because the covered porch allows for a safer environment. My concern is, and this is an interior concern, so again, it's just my concern, it's not speaking for the board, but it seems that we've lost some 50 square feet in the post office itself. And the actual experience seems quite truncated. And I understand it. I see why. It's a fairly narrow building. But that, especially walking by, getting to the counter, and it just imagine having 6 to, 10 groups with their hands full of packages, and what that experience is like. I don't know what that dimension is, but it looks like about 5 feet. It just feels that we've lost something there. And I would agree with Pingree that having a separate entrance is for me a requirement. I've seen a number of stores come and go, as everyone has in the area, but to me, the post office is more important than the general store. And it just seems like and I'm sure this is the program of the client, but it just seems like it appears in the quality of the space is also subservient, and that's a shame. But again, like, what would it be like for groups of people attending and trying to take care of their business and opening their mailboxes? I just think it's an unfortunate final space. And the second item is that on the west side, I don't know how you'll resolve the parking. It's obviously difficult, but that west elevation, I'm looking online right now, but the west elevation, and particularly the south, I'm not sure if like the south will become an important elevation? Because will people be parking now somehow in that, it seems very truncated, but I just don't see it clear. Is there any parking going on? Is the public space to the south? Again, it's just not clear to me. And I think I really appreciate a lot of effort in various of the elevations, but that stairwell and the way that the siding behind it, it just seems somehow, it's completely functional. I understand it, but I just wonder if there's a way to resolve that so that it would be less about those stairs and a bit more about the building. And I'm sure there's some kind of solution to that. But so those are my two main concerns. And I would also, I like the nostalgia of the chimney, but it would be nice if it was actually functional in some way. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Just a second, look, I'd like you to be able to say what you need.
Before he responds,
Yes.
I first of all want to say thank you. All of you,
Please
this
be sure to
entire-
speak
Oh,
up
sorry,
very
my name is
loudly
Megan
for the-
Haverkirk. I'm a board alternate.
Yeah.
Hi, nice to see you guys. Let me just say thank you for doing what you're doing, all the research and thought for the history and everything you've done for the future. I really appreciate, and we really have an A team going here, which I'm excited about. I just had a couple questions, wondering, and I'm sure we'll get this later in the process, and these are early stages, but just curious where the actual blue mailbox sits in your heads. And was also curious about the gutter style and what the plans are with that taken care of.
Haven't gotten down to those details, but I think the blue mailbox should land wherever you guys would like and the government allows. And that's so much of what's sort of the design for all of this is, again, the constraints that we've got, but trying to get within those constraints of all the rules and requirements, get this thing as close to what everybody wants this to be. And that's really the challenge of all this stuff. There's a lot of moving parts to this thing. I thought we'd just clean the thing up and have it open by this spring. Just talking to the post office, it's been, I'm gonna get the help, we're gonna get the septic, we're gonna get the thing, and everything. It's like, so where's the mailbox to? I think we start with where we want, and I sit down with them and say, can we have it here? Maybe it stays where it is. I think that'd be great.
And then I have one other thing I wanted to ask about, which.
And then the gutter style is whatever's most appropriate for the building.
Okay.
Could be cedar, could be galvanized, could be, lead to copper. But I think whatever ends up, by the time the whole sort of aesthetic of the thing, and if there's a historic precedent about what this thing really was at some point, which we want to, pick the year, finger can pick the year. But that ends up being kind of, yes, we're open to getting it right.
Okay, and then my last thought was, have you considered solar, and did that come up at all?
A lot of what we're trying to do is living up to all the current standards and future standards as much as we can. Incorporating that is, we're open to considering all those kinds of things if it ends up being something that everybody's aesthetically.
I will give my opinion. I don't appreciate it, but I understand when you said we're thinking in the next 150 years, just wondering if that was gonna get slid in at the end, or if you're thinking about it.
Yeah, that's the challenge, to get that to work with such a historical structure. And right now, our intention is to try and address all those sort of future energy efficiency things with actually getting the envelope. Because 90% of it is going to be getting this old envelope up to speed and getting it still, getting it properly insulated, getting all the reproduction windows double pane. Right now the front windows are some of the original. Some of those panes are original, single pane. They've been rotted out so many times for all the condensation, frost, and everything else, which I kind of love. But by the same token, not that efficient. So we've already started the process of working with some window manufacturers, custom window manufacturers that can actually recreate these windows. So again, it looks exactly the same as much as we can, but it's thermal pane. Get the whole envelope, get the roof, get some thicker stuff up inside the roof, basically rebuild it from the inside out, more efficient equipment, and address as many of those kinds of needs and really future-proof thing that way. as much as we can. And so I think we're agreeing there. That's, we want to keep this thing as historically correct as, yeah.
Thank you, Megan.
Well, one of the things, we should talk about the post office space because Nick brought up sort of a perception that it's getting smaller, and it's not getting smaller. It may be a function of some of the charts that we have, but we have separated out in the proposed plan, the bathroom is now part of the common area in the back, and to serve both uses. It was originally in the pre-existing post office space, it was calculated as part of the post office space, but it's now been taken out and put in the ADA compliant common area, so that may be skewing the chart, but the goal has always been to make sure that the post office has more space going forward, and we're sacrificing a little bit of the store space on the inside to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, I might make one comment about that. In speaking to the Karen at the post office, currently the clerks can work behind the face of the boxes. They can stand in their area, and the new proposal would be freestanding boxes that are up against the wall. They're hinged and can open up. You're going to stuff the mail from the back of the boxes and then close them back up against the wall. So you're while you're sorting mail and putting it into the boxes, those sections will be open, but then they close up and are right against the exterior walls of the room. So you're not utilizing all that sorting space and access to the back of the boxes. So you actually gain quite a bit of square footage doing it that way. The whole concept of how you're going to mount these boxes, antique faced boxes, from what I understand it, the drive is towards would actually reduce the amount of space that you need in there. And they would be gaining perhaps 100 more boxes or so.
And the compliance, I'm sure, of the back of the boxes now, I wouldn't qualify.
Yeah.
Where it's sort of now, I think it had to be that much larger just to.
Yeah, so basically what we've tried to do is trade, like you were saying, trade a lot of the sorting area and or the stuffing area.
Yeah.
Not even the sorting area, because it's so small.
Right.
And take that sort of narrow hallway that wraps all the way around and reconfigure it so actually the stuffing area, which is just kind of actually inverted so that the actual lobby space, the actual is bigger. So the walking space is bigger. You don't have to sort of sneak past your neighbor anymore and use the system that they kind of have with the newer boxes, but retrofit that so it's actually all the old boxes. We love the old brass bronze boxes. We've been on search to try and find.
Yeah, they're hard to find.
More of the, I found 50 up on the North Fork of all places. So
Really?
yeah, sitting on the side of the road with flowers in them. Got a bit of a restoration project ahead of us. I mean, you know, if you find these things, it's good. Yeah, so we're on the hunt. So if anybody hears, we're looking. We are looking. Karen's got some great resources for repairing and restoring these things. Like whole kit of parts that she keeps this thing going with.
Yeah.
She's the first one I talked to. You know, are you really up for this? She says this would be great because I kind of needed Karen.
Lessons from Merrill, maybe. Repair.
Very good. Do you have a sense of where we are at?
Even procedurally?
No, I mean in discussion today.
Oh, I think we did. Yeah, this has been really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Our obvious, I think we sort of expressed it last time. We're trying to do everything we can to provide you guys everything and incorporate all the thoughts and considerations as Tony and Tony sort of direct us as quickly as we can. The goal is to be open and have this thing up and running and serving everybody and functioning by next spring, which is a bit of a fast heavy lift. So yeah.
Be exciting when you move it back.
Tony, is there Tony Tohill, is there a procedural resolution on this then today?
No, but could I ask a question? I thought at the very beginning I heard a member express an opposition to the concepts. I heard language to that effect, but I haven't heard any, I don't know who that was. and I haven't-
That was me, and I think I was getting a little too into the weeds, into the potential use and not the concept itself of the extended porch.
Okay, so then there's no need to pursue any of that comment, right?
No, not to the concept of the porch.
Okay, so
Because a sea of cafe tables and people in various athletic wear, you know, hanging out there all day, I might have some issue.
Ouch.
okay, okay. All right.
Dress code.
Old timey.
Just to put some minds at ease on that too, one of the things that we started talking about was maybe even doing things on a very temporary, like one season license basis, see how it goes, you know, if we try out something, do it for just one season with no, you know, permanent rights being granted, test it out, see how it works, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but that way no one feels like you're locking in something that's then gonna become a vested right for the next 150 years.
Yeah.
That said, you realize that you're asking the zoned use to change, and that goes through a large procedure. Lisa, did you have?
I just wanted to, by the way, Tony, you can't see me, this is Lisa talking. I just wanted to work forward to assist our process. Would it help architecture, the board, that you guys do another meeting like this just on this subject with the people?
Why?
I don't think that's necessary.
Why would there be another meeting?
So they would have a resolution today and we wouldn't have another meeting on this particular subject.
No resolution. This was.
We don't have an application before us at the moment.
Right,
so
no,
we
but
can't-
I'm just saying, keeping it separate from the long agenda that we normally have at our regular meetings, right?
But I think once we have a full application in, then we can make that decision if we need to. Would that be appropriate, Mr. Toho?
Yes, you can't get ahead of yourself. There are site planning issues here that are significant that this board would not be authorized to address, and in particular would not be authorized to resolve. And those have to be addressed in the months ahead, and the applicant is aware of those issues. So this meeting today, it was simply an opportunity for the board to express if there were any strong objections to any feature of the plan. So the applicant can now leave the meeting today with an understanding that if there is to be any redesign, they have a sense of where that should be at the present time.
And we have talked about that staircase on the south side.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. All right, very good. Thank you, Tommy.
Nick Martin,
Yes,
you mentioned the stairway on the south side, and we talked a little bit about the post office square footage and things like that. So the stairway on the south side, again, back to you know, the use of that second floor, what sort of drove the creation of that whole second floor. If that use is no longer of interest, then things like that stair that access that second floor would no longer be required, as well as would probably the dormers. So the original intention of sort of providing a place for these articles of interest really kind of drove that second floor addition, second floor space. And if those articles have a different home that other folks maybe, you know, this is all whatever you guys would like to do there, then that changes that that back elevation, that second story, and all the architectural elements associated with that.
And that would resolve Pingree's new roof line objection as well.
Yeah, so really, it's
As a member of the board, I would love for you to give up that opportunity, the historical benefit to this community at this early stage of the discussions.
we'd love to be able to provide a space, and that was something very much of interest. So it's
Right
really.
now, we've given alternatives as to headroom on top and concept. You've come up with the fact that it's an ancillary, a newer structure on top of an older structure that goes behind it. I'd rather you resolve the staircase than give up the historical opportunity for us. So please don't just give it up.
Okay.
Here's just a general question. Do you find that the condition of the existing building will withstand a moving? Do you think upon when it gets jacked up, they may say it's not worth it?
It will survive it. I've had a couple analysis done on the building. What makes it a little easier than it may initially seem is that the whole series of additions and enclosures and everything else on the back of the building right now in this design are replaced with a simpler form and a cleaner new. What we're talking about, sort of the subservient back structure now. So really that means that the building and the structure that's being moved is the current front structure. And that one is a little newer and in a little better shape. The other one has a lot of different additions added onto it. And however, it's got a massive concrete floor. Underneath it was added a whole of the kitchen equipment back there. So it'll survive. That's our assessment. So we're not reluctant to
Okay. Just curious.
moved a lot of buildings. You've probably moved a lot of buildings as well. So. And there'll probably be, the necessary cross bracing, certainly something of this age and the areas where the building structure has sort of been compromised over the years with different additions and things like that. A big part of us sort of opening up the inside was to really find where these areas were that we're going to need to reinforce in order to make this thing move and really hold together. So there probably will be cross bracing and things like that to really make sure it survives as integrally as possible. The bigger windows that are the older original glass will probably be removed because, as you probably suspect, they would probably be the first ones that would want to be a little cranky about moving after 100 years or 75 years. Anyway, we think it will with some effort. It's important that the original structure survive.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. All right. Any further comments from the five of us? No? Okay, great.
We need to make a motion to adjourn.
Yes, I was going to adjourn. Yes. Yes.
Who's for this building?
That has not actually been disclosed to us yet, as far as I know.
Why would that be?
We don't formally have an application.
Yeah, we don't have an application from the owner per se, and I don't know whether it's an LLC or what the situation is with that.
Yeah, I mean, just generally speaking, we're trying to make this about the building, not about the owner, because we want this to be about 150 years from now too, not just today and some particular person's vision.
Right. Okay.
Now, are you expanding in the back of the store? Into the property next door?
If you're gonna speak, could you please come up, because we're not able to hear you, and you need to introduce yourself, please.
She did.
She did.
She did.
It's a local voice.
Set up a Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
David, very nice meeting.
I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get an answer for you at the moment.
Okay.
Just thank whoever it is to stay with them past Labor Day.
I hope so. Tony, are we okay to adjourn this?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. If you feel as if you've expressed all the points that the applicant fairly should have an opportunity to hear at this time, yes. The applicant will then redraw or do things in accordance with the sense of today's comments.
I had one question. Is this type of meeting more devoted to civic-minded projects? Or can someone come in for sort of information tire kicking before they?
It was set aside because of the priority of the structure
Okay.
to the village. It can be done this way. It's not normally done this way.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It
Tom,
was-
before you finish then,
Yes.
seeing how some Philippa has opened her mouth, I'm wondering if I can open mine.
Yes.
Sure. All right,
Introduce
This is,
yourself.
certainly. I think from what I've been able to understand.
Who are
you?
This is Lee Foster.
This is not a public hearing, I realize that, but I was given the impression that public input was being asked for.
Yes.
And so upon this meeting coming to my attention, I figured I'd come. I have just a brief thing to read. The problem is it's now repetitive because of what it is that you've addressed, I believe. But I'm going to read it anyway. Is that all right?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Don't we want to know who this lady is?
Oh, Lee Foster, sorry. Main Street, Sagaponic.
Yeah.
When it became known that the new owners of Sag Store were looking for community input, I thought seriously about what I might say. To respect ownership and yet assert something outside of it always has been a fraught conversation. If you don't own it, what can you say? What right do you have? To be opposed upon, be it legislatively or socially, is a question better brought to a gradual understanding than to the public forum, where discord can so quickly arise and resentment spread like contagion. I came to this conversation today with memories of Sag as a child who walked from the beach for a quart of milk and candy in the late 40s. And I married and lived here since 1963. The first indication I had of some accommodation to the renovation of the store was when a member of this community said, after looking at the documents that are now being reviewed, "I like it." The restrictions and constraints on this property are well known to the owners and not my purview. The second impression that I'm sharing with you today was when another person said, if Sag Store does not reflect what it is or what it has been, then there is no there there. That might be too simple and almost too trite to evaluate, but it is also difficult because it is the hard cast of thought. The building is real, but it is also infused with this place. Without serious consideration of what is here, Sagaponic will be referred to as the beach, a commodity, or somebody's street address. It's all of these things, yes, but essentially Sag Store must continue to be a place where people can meet one another randomly, unexpectedly, briefly, or for an extended conversation. There is no other place. What brings us here is the post office, an identification that is as endemic as a birth certificate. The benches, the conviviality, the humanness. Yes, there's always factors of the humanness, trash and whatever. But please make every effort to leave the benches and retain the trees. Sag Store is here and there. Please leave the benches and retain the trees. I think that's all I really want to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
We feel strong about the benches and the trees as well. And I've looked at a lot of different ways to try and make sure they survive.
Even with the porch and the benches?
And several other elements around them as well that we're trying to. So
Very good.
they're important.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for coming.
I have
Thank
to
you
make a
for.
motion, we are meeting. So I think you have to adjourn it.
Yes, I am. I'm going to. Yeah. Thank you very much, and we'll continue to work through on this. Thanks you for making extra time, board members, for this. Thank you, Nick, for your comments. Tony Tohill, thank you very much for your guidance, and I would like a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
And
And my keys.